Amy, are you ready? We can start. Okay. You're on mute, by the way.
That's why I was just nodding. I took myself off.
Okay. All right. This is the third of the 3 public informational meetings that are being held for the fiscal year 2022 CDBG application process. The Community Development Block Grant Program is an entitlement program that provides an annual grant on a formula basis to the city of Kingston. Excuse me. Launched in 1974, the CDBG program is one of the longest continuously run programs at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. HUD awards grants to entitlement community grantees to carry out a wide variety of community development activities directed towards revitalizing neighborhoods and by providing improved community facilities and services for principally low and moderate income persons. Entitlement communities develop their own programs and funding priorities, and the City of Kingston has laid their priorities out in their 5-year consolidated plan, which runs from 2019 to 2023. The city's priorities include infrastructure improvements, neighborhood facility improvements, housing rehabilitation, code enforcement, public services, and park infrastructure. Fiscal year 2022 application was made available October 12th and will be due December 10th, no later than noon. The application must be completed in its entirety or it will be deemed unaccepted. This year, the city will once again allow for those interested parties to submit applications for public service programs only. These programs must meet HUD's eligibility criteria as well as fall within the HUD matrix code. These activities must primarily benefit persons of low and moderate income, and they must be residents of the City of Kingston. Examples of qualifying public services would include, but are not limited to, childcare, healthcare, job training, recreation, education, public safety, fair housing, and senior services. The public services do not include payments for individuals for food, clothing, rent, or other income payments. Eligible program costs for public services include payment for labor, supplies, materials to administer the program, and the cost of operating that portion of a program. In addition to completing the application, there are 9 exhibits that are required to accompany the application. New this year is a question form related to previous CDBG funding and a question form regarding federal eligibility and consolidated plan priorities. The applicant will also need to submit a copy of a previous year's Form 990. If the applicant does not have a Form 990, then they must provide a copy of a tax form that they do have. So it should be your, at least by now, I think your 2020. I think all taxes for 2020 are probably done. All applications must also be completed in their entirety in order for them to be reviewed for qualification. CDBG funding is intended as seed money. And by that, I mean it's meant to be used as startup funding for a program. So if you're applying for programming that's been funded in the past, your application must significantly show an expansion of the program. Once the city has determined which activities will be funded, we will then write the annual action plan and make it available for a 30-day public comment period prior to submitting it to HUD for their review and approval. Upon approval by HUD, the city will enter into contract with HUD and request funding for the new program year to be released. Absolutely no money whatsoever must be spent or can be spent on these activities prior to the city and HUD entering into a contract. If money is spent prior to this, you will not be reimbursed. Our fiscal year begins on July 1st and runs through June 30th. There have been times the federal government has not authorized the U.S. Treasury to release the CDBG funding, so there have been delays. Everybody needs to understand that this is a reimbursable program. So as stated in the application, it is imperative that the applicant have cash flow to run their programming activity until they are able to be reimbursed. If you need to borrow money in order to run your program, then you should reconsider applying. All applicants are to supply us with information regarding their funding sources. Our office is available for technical assistance and guidance on how to complete your application and what would qualify and what does not. If your activity is chosen to be funded, you will enter into an agreement with the city after the city has contracted with HUD. At that time, you will be walked through the process and explained as to what is needed as far as documentation in order to submit for reimbursement. Should at any time during the program year you find your programming is or has changed, you must contact our office immediately to be sure that you still qualify and that you will need to make, and you will also need to make a request for changes in writing. It is not a given that such changes will qualify, and it is also not a given that you will be reimbursed for your expenditures. Sometimes budgets need to be changed or need modification, so this too must be brought to our attention in order for us to help you get the process moving along a lot smoother. Amy is always available to help you with any of your questions as far as your budgets and modifications go. Both of us are available at any given time to answer any other questions. Amy, did you want to add anything to this?
Does any budget modifications have to be submitted well before June 30th? You cannot wait until after the fiscal year is over, and then you finally realize that you've spent too much money in one category and not enough in another. If there are exigent circumstances, we can take that into consideration. But we would ask that you can anticipate, at least, after the third quarter, after March 31st, that you see ahead of time that you could be over in one and under in another in order to modify. Waiting until the end of the year and say, oh, can I have more money because I spent way more than I thought in this area is, unacceptable, because we have approved your application based on your budget. And we also, if you've asked for X dollars and you're not funded that amount, we get a revised budget from you. And so we ask that you stay, within that budget.
I'm sorry. I also need to add, there's a thing called timeliness, and it's expected that every subrecipient is able to spend their funding within the fiscal year of June 30th or July 1st to June 30th. The city has to meet their timeliness, and the only way we can meet our timeliness is if the subrecipients also meet theirs. So I just want everybody to be aware that all funding is supposed to be spent within the fiscal year, and we do have a few guidelines that need to be followed. At this time, if anybody has any questions, unless Amy would like to add anything else, I'd like to open this up for somebody to ask a question if they'd like to.
I have a question.
Sure.
So we are focusing our grant on, I'm calling from the Maritime Museum, by the way. My name is Lisa. So we're focusing on our programs, our youth programs, and getting some scholarship coverage to offer them to low-income families. And I would say that of the 6 different programs that we're offering, at least 2, if not 3, are not new programs, but they haven't been running since the onset of COVID. So we are bringing them back. It's more of a revival rather than a new program. So they haven't really changed. We're just, don't have the funding or we do have the funding, but barely, to start them back up again. And we thought this would be a good way to, kind of jumpstart them. So does that kind of fit into your requirement that this is seed money?
If you can expand on it, where say you were doing 10 kids and now you can do 15, I mean, that's expanding it. But if you're running the same program with the intent to have the same amount of kids or students or whatever, then that would not be considered a significant expansion. And while I understand it might not have run since prior to COVID, it's if it's something that we have funded in the past, then it wouldn't qualify unless you could do an expansion on it.
You guys haven't funded it in the past. So it would be a brand new program for the city to see. Yeah. But,
That's
you know,
fine.
okay. All right, great. Thank you.
The thing is, if we have funded it in the past with CDBG funding, if it's something that has not been expanded on, then it would not qualify.
Great. Okay, I got it. I understand now. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is Jamie from the A.J. Williams Myers African Roots Community Center. I wanted to find out if you could provide any guidance regarding how to best select which priority in the consolidated plan priorities when your program would meet multiple of them. Because it looks like I have to choose one, and I'm just wondering, like, are there any guidelines around how to,
No, it would,
which one?
whatever one that you guys feel would be most beneficial would be the way I would go. I mean,
Could she number them in the boxes?
I think there's only room for one, but I mean, feel free to add an additional sheet just to let us know.
Are you talking about in that one exhibit, Jamie, where there's multiple boxes, you know, for programs that
It
went with
says- Yeah, it says consolidated plan priorities. And
Right.
there's a section called low and moderate income youth, low and moderate income seniors, homelessness. And so if the program is going to serve youth and seniors and would be providing both recreational and life skills and education, like, you know, that kind of covers multiple items. So how do I narrow down which one to choose if I can only choose one?
Again, I would just attach an additional sheet or write on it that you have more than one of the priorities that would be met, and I would just list them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anybody else? We'll give it a few more minutes if anybody else thinks of any questions or if anybody else comes on.
I do have another one. This is Jamie again.
Okay,
So in terms of submitting the application, I do have the email, which has the attachments, and the documents are both in like a Word file and a PDF. Is there a preference for what type of format the attachments are coming in? And yeah, because I'm just noticing, like, on the Word, things move around as you type into it, but then in the PDF, you can't really type into it. So just wondering, like, should I do it in the Word and then save it as a PDF and submit it like that? Do you want each thing as its own attachment or have them all combined? Do you have any guidance on how to submit in that sense?
since Amy is the one that has to put all of these together once she gets them, I will let her decide how
that's
she
fine.
wants to. Yeah, I'll let her decide how she wants to receive them.
Thank you, Mandy. What I would do, Jamie, is what you had said, is type it in Word and send it as a PDF. Because then I can't mess with it. It cannot be adulterated or modified. And when I do get it, if I do see errors or things that I would ask you to modify, at least you have it in a Word document that you can.
Okay.
You could always send it twice to me. Just that's why I send it to everybody in both a Word and a PDF, so that nobody inadvertently, modifies it, in the Word portion. But it's easier to just go right in, to, exhibit 1 and type into that, and just add it in section by section. But please submit it cover sheet first, all of the exhibits as one. They don't have to be page by page. You can, but I do not want separate attachments and me to have to put it together. And then the NEPA form, can be last, the NEPA and the application acknowledgements. The bylaws are Exhibit 8. I do not forward Exhibits 8 and 9. I forward Exhibits 1 through 7. So that's why it's at the end and I can extract those files. We keep them, but nobody else sees those. And to that end, I would also remind everyone that all of your applications are foilable. And so please refrain from putting any bank account information or personal, sensitive, confidential information such as social security numbers, birth dates, etc., in your application.
Thank you
Does
so
that
much.
answer your
Yeah,
question?
that's really helpful. And so then we're going to omit all of the pages that are giving us the information.
Yeah, I don't need those back.
Okay, I figured. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Dan, Aaron?
Hey guys, no, I'm all good, but I do want to second what Amy said. Doing it in Word and then saving it to a PDF is really helpful because you get it in straight. But I several times have been thankful that I had it in Word document after.
Thanks, Dan. Nobody else?
It doesn't appear anybody else wants to talk.
Yeah, but you have Mandy's and my contact information. Please feel free to reach out. I strongly urge you to get your applications in well before noon on Friday. I have had incomplete applications and then we cannot accept them, or major flaws that would be best addressed prior to noon on Friday.
Doesn't appear anybody else.
I guess.
Okay, well, if nobody's adverse to it, I would venture to say that the public informational session is over. But as Amy said, any questions, please feel free. You can either email us or call us. Like I said before, we're here for the technical assistance, and anything we can do to provide that for you, we're more than happy to do.